Well, hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for taking the time to join us. My name is Edward Hillel. I am the artistic director of the Generation Project, and it is my pleasure to host this eighth episode of season two of the G Sessions. This weekly live short conversation is part of the Generation Project. It's a public art campaign to encourage dialogue between people from all walks of life in order to recognize that we are all immigrants of different generations, or what we call Gs. And we are going to soon meet one of those Gs. But first, I want to add that we are coming to you from the Lenapehoking, the Lenape homeland of Manhattan. We respect that as immigrants, we follow in their footsteps and offer our care and gratitude to the land and the people who came before us, as well as to those who are now with us. Wherever we are, we should all strive to leave our mothership, planet Earth, in better shape than it was in when we arrived. And so today I'm especially excited to host a dear friend and fellow photographer, Bob London. And hey, Bob, there you are.
Hey, good afternoon, Edward.
Good afternoon. So great to see you. So I have known you, Bob, since my arrival in New York, right?
Yeah.
If I recall, we met at a bus stop where we used to bring our daughters to take the school bus every morning.
Yeah, funny how things happen.
That's right. And you asked me what I did, and I explained it, and you told me you were a photographer. And then before I knew it, you had me working with you, and it's great to think about that now because as immigrants, we all need a helping hand, and this is just what you did with me. So I always appreciate it.
You're a welcome member of the studio, that's for sure.
So I know this is difficult for us photographers to be in front of the camera because we're so used to being behind it. But you have had a long and varied professional career as a photographer, and maybe we can start by you could tell us a bit about it, about yourself.
Well, about myself, what's funny, as you say, an immigrant, but in some ways, I'm a New York City immigrant in a way. I mean, I grew up in just an hour away, which is the funny thing, in New Jersey, but it was very undiversified, very rural. We never went into New York City to visit or anything. And if we did, it was you go into the convention center, park there, and then immediately leave. Like that was my father's venture to New York City. So I never really thought anything about it. I would never want to move there, but I graduated college, and I felt I had to apprentice to really. That's where it was. That's where it was. I figured I'd be there for a few years, and then travel back up to Vermont, where I was ski bumming, and start my business there. But once I moved here, I loved it. I just really, the diversity just really fit with me, until like I just absorbed it, and now my wife complains I never want to leave. So,
well, I mean, there's no better place than New York. Each borough is just chock full of the world, people from everywhere.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about the kinds of photography you've done, who you've worked with, just so we get a sense.
Yeah, well, so you come in here and you start working for other photographers to learn, and it was just a lot to learn, and it was really great. I was lucky enough to get some work doing production for Vanity Fair, so I got into the little high-end celebrity stuff. But unlike you, Edward, I don't do the fine art. I was just always concentrated in advertising, magazines, pharmaceutical ads, ads for any kind of whatever. And then I had the Fifth Avenue studio for a long time, 11 years.
I remember well.
Yeah. So did a lot of projects there, but it's all changing a little bit. We got into digital and we did this little bit of this and that, and so now we're not dinosaurs, we're adjusting. So
we were talking about our kids, and how they both went to the United Nations school, and you made an interesting observation about prejudice, which I'm wondering if you remember and you can share with us.
Well, yeah, right. So it was just a lot of people, when they have kids, they leave, right? And I never really understood that. Now, maybe if I had 5 kids, I might want to leave, but that would only be because of price, But my daughter, growing up here, I just witnessed it in the, you go to the playgrounds, like you all know we do, and when they're young, and they just don't see it. It was just fascinating. Like, you're 2, I'm 2, let's go play. Like color of your skin wasn't even like a consideration or anything. Language, they didn't need to talk to each other even, right? They just played. So it was just kind of wonderful to see that no one is born with prejudice. It's just, unfortunately, it gets learned in the wrong way. And then we sent our kids to United Nations school. So she continued that diversity, and there might have been some mean girls, but they weren't black mean girls or Asian mean girls. They were just mean girls, But but she never really understood what prejudice even was, And I have a story with some relatives later when she realized some of her relatives were prejudiced, that she was just shocked. She just like, how could someone I love be prejudiced? It was interesting.
Yeah, I bet it's, when you don't have hate in your heart and suddenly you just see someone expressing it and you have no formation, no understanding where that comes from. Interestingly, another conversation we were having was about your work as a wedding photographer that really exposed you to this kind of rich stew of cultures that coexist in the United States and particularly in New York. So maybe share something about that for us.
Yeah, so I was doing the advertising thing and the magazine stuff, but that stuff, it can be very, it's very competitive and it's very up and down. You're eating steak or you're eating pasta, as they say. So I said, well, how can I just diversify this industry for myself a little bit? So I naively went into wedding photography because, there's a lot of weddings. So, and at the time, there weren't a lot of good people doing wedding photography. But this being New York City, there's every culture here, right? So I feel like I became a destination wedding photographer and I never left the city, which was kind of funny, and you're just invited into these people's world for a day and they're just so gracious and you really see a whole nother culture that you would just never had a chance to see, being with the families that close and personal.
Well, first of all, it's amazing that you endeavored such a feat, right? Because most people would have a hard time thinking, I'll just parachute into this world, into this world of people from India or people from Pakistan or Vietnam or different places, and just try and capture their moment, capture something timeless and meaningful for them. What do you think in your upbringing gave you that kind of, I guess, confidence, right? Because many people seek that.
Be honest with you, I don't know. In fact, everyone who I know are good friends, who have met my family, I should say, not know my family, but who met my family, just say, how did you come out this way? Like, you were raised by wolves. And yet you're so embracing. My one sister, I don't even think she has a passport. So I don't know. I just, well, I've always been open to new things. So that was part of it. My family always said I was a weirdo because I would order what I didn't know about on the menu, which they thought that was nuts. They always would order the same thing. So I just was always a seeker of things that were new. I traveled a lot when I was young, and I guess I'm just not afraid of failure. I guess that's the biggest thing, right? For everybody, you just
That's
have
just
to.
a wonderful lesson to learn, that failure is part of growth.
Failure is part of growth. Yeah, if you don't fail at something, you're not growing. That's right. That's right.
Yeah, well, you not only did you do it so well, you roped me in, and so I started doing videos with you and meeting all these wonderful families. Can you share with us one story, just one quick story of something from another culture that you picked up at one of those weddings?
I mean, something I haven't seen before, or
Yeah, something that you witnessed as a result of being a wedding photographer that opened your eyes to different cultures.
well, I mean, there are a few things that happen. I mean, I've done, of course, I've done many Jewish weddings, but I was lucky enough to do an Hasidic wedding, ultra Orthodox, which actually you worked on with me, um, on that one that we did, and you don't realize like the separation of the women and the men. I mean, that's just something I've never seen before, right?
Mhm.
Um, and you can read about that, but to actually witness it was very interesting. Very interesting.
It's quite moving.
Yes, it was quite moving. And then I've done some Lebanese weddings where the belly dancing is is part of the
Yes.
important. But what was the surprise there? The women were more into it than the men. The men were,
Belly dancing is
yeah, they were having cigars and whiskey at the bar, and all the women were the ones dancing around the belly dancer.
so okay. I'm going to ask you about your G status, but before doing that, I just want to remind our viewers that you're all also G's, all of you out there, because somewhere down the ancestral line, we all come from somewhere. G0s, like me, were born elsewhere. G1s are born here from immigrant parents. G2s, great grandparents, are immigrants, and so on. And the Lenape we mentioned at the outset are anywhere from G436 to G600, but they're also, in a way, their own way immigrants. So now, Bob, can you share your G status with us, and tell us where your ancestors are from?
Yeah, so I feel like most of us probably. I'm a mixed G, so my maternal side, I'm a G2. I mean, my grandmother was born in Ireland, and my paternal side, G3, because that my great grandfather was born in Ireland. So so a little bit mixed. So and
But even in those mixes, were there other threads? Were there other connections, or were they pure German? Were they pure Irish?
pure Irish on my mother's side. Yeah, which is unusual. But my father's side was a mix of English and Italian. So I'm pretty just like really about so like 50-50 really. I didn't because I have done some of quite a bit of the ancestry, so I do have a pretty good handle on that.
Uh-huh. Did you mention something about on your paternal side having some link to the Prussian Empire?
Yeah. So what was interesting, I don't know if we have an actual link, direct link to that, but my father's grandfather was born in Königsberg, which is more famous for its meatballs.
Yes, it was the second most important city in Germany after Berlin, I believe.
Yeah, at one point, right. So that was part of Prussia. That's where you're getting that from, right? And although he was an English citizen, I don't know why, but he was definitely born there. And we kind of talked about that, how here you are in Königsberg, and then after World War II, it just switched over to Russian. And you would, let's say you were just the citizen living there. One day you're German, the next day you're Russian. And I'm sure there are areas of Europe where that could have changed 3, maybe more times, right? You know, and you become a stranger in your own land, and you didn't even move your house.
That's right. It's so fascinating. It's, the immigrant story is so much about the movement and being a nomad and a refugee and an exile, and it's always us, the people, who have to move elsewhere, usually to run away from something horrible. And this is kind of like the mirror image, right? Like you stay put, and suddenly you have another passport, you have another identity, you have to learn another language, and how do you adjust in that way? It's fascinating.
Right. And you're and those are usually purely political reasons, not cultural or anything like that. So yeah, it's kind of fascinating because being here in the States, we just can't even fathom something like that happening, right?
Now, you also mentioned something about, which is extremely timely, that you have some kind of connection to the Biden family. We didn't really explore that, but you dropped it in like as if it was, I'm just a relative of the Bidens. So was there any background to that?
Well, there was some funny story with that with so that's my grandmother's side. My grandmother was a Blewett, and Joe Biden's his grandmother, I believe on his maternal side, was a Blewett. And they were both from Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Ah, okay.
So now I have not been able to connect the dots directly to him, although they've been connected by circumstance, you might say, which a lot of people do genealogy by that person moved here, and it has that name, so they must be connected. But I haven't had the documents to show it. But anyway, we're not related in Scranton, and because we're Blewitts, not a very common name. I'm quite sure we're connected in the motherland and back in Ireland. So that would make me like a fourth cousin.
Well, there's going to be some parties in the White House. Try and get an invitation.
Yes, we're waiting for my invitation. So.
Your wife and daughter would be very happy. Reason to get dressed up.
Yeah, there you go. It's like, I do have a closet full of suits, so maybe I could actually use one day, right? So that would be good. And the funny thing with speaking of my grandmother, so she was born in Ireland, and I have my Irish passport through that. To citizenship. So very lucky to have that. But she was always in fear of if she got found out that they would send her back to Ireland. And in fact, my cousin worked for the Nixon administration for a time, and she had to get security clearance into standard procedure. And Secret Service interviewed her, and they knew that she was, of course they do the research, they know that she was born in Ireland, and she denied it right to the face. No, I was they just wrote her off as, a crazy old lady. But she got her security clearance, it's all. And they didn't send her back to Ireland. So all was good.
Would you consider actually going to live in Ireland? Do you have that much of a connection?
Unfortunately, and then we touched on this too. I didn't know this until my 40s that my grandmother was born in Ireland, which was unfortunate because the way they've kind of narrowed it down as to who gets citizenship. It used to be more open. So because I got citizenship after I was married and after I had a child, my wife and child do not have citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I had gotten it before I was married, my wife would have gotten it. If I would have gotten it before my child was born, she would have gotten it.
Well, we are happy to have you here. So
yes, it's good to be here too, right?
Yes.
I can visit Ireland.
You could visit Ireland, absolutely. So finally, I do want to ask you, we ask our guests to anything for us?
I missed that part, the last part. Yeah.
I said we ask our guests to bring something to share and to talk about, something visual that connects you to your G status, and I hope you have something to share with us.
Well, here I don't have the actual copy, but I have it on my iPad, and it's not coming up very well. But what it
Tell us
is,
what it
yeah, what it is my father's side was, like I said, half Italian, and I was going through my uncle's. I have a great uncle who had no family. Became a priest when he was in his 60s, and so we were going through his stuff when we were, taking care of him as he got older. And I came across this paper. He kept a lot of stuff. And I came across these papers and I showed them to my dad. I was like, what is this change of name thing? And he goes, oh, it was the war. They didn't want to be Italian. They changed their name. Now, up until that point, I thought we were just English because they changed their name to Victor and never talked about being Italian. Their name was Corritore. And it was 1940, September 1942, and the war. We're in the middle of the war, and they didn't want to be Italian, so they petitioned him and his family, all of them, petitioned to have their name changed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that was a beautiful story and a beautiful short conversation. But I see our time is already up. We're just getting started. So thank you so much for being part of our story here, Bob.
You're welcome. It's been great.
And to learn more about us, please go to www.gproject.org, like our Instagram and Facebook pages. You could also send us your G stories and photos. We would love to hear from you. We will be sure to respond. And join us next week when I will host Emerald Galleries, a remarkable young photographer with a fascinating story. Thanks for being with us, and happy Thanksgiving.